Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And in Apple news, we have to talk about buy now, pay later because it's about to explode in use. And I think this is an absolutely terrible thing. Now, this is coming from Zach Hall of 9 to 5 Mac, and I think that this is an important one. And so heads up iPhone users and also Android as well, because I promise you it's coming for you as well. Now, if you remember Apple Pay Later, you might not, but that was Apple's buy now, pay later service, and it barely launched before the company basically decided to nerf it. Now, replacing Apple's buy now, pay later option is an integration with more widely available options. And so as of literally yesterday, basically Affirm, which is one of the largest buy now, pay later services, is available as an option for qualified iOS 18 users when they are checking out using Apple Pay. Now, Affirm lets approved users make purchases with bi-weekly payments or monthly payments. So in other words, you can't afford that plane ticket, you can't afford that thing, you don't have to pay for it now, just basically take out essentially a loan and start paying it off over time. Now, while Affirm is already a well-established buy now, pay later service, integrating that feature into Apple Pay checkout is essentially going to give them a whole new audience that will simply use that feature. And I have very serious problems with this, and here's why. Buy now, pay later is one of the fastest growing categories in consumer finance, according to a new report by Wells Fargo that came out a few months ago earlier this year. Buy now, pay later loans especially can be hard to track, making it easier for consumers to get in over their heads, even more so than credit cards, which are simpler to account for despite having much higher interest rates. And so I think that is one of those things as well. Now, Tim Quinlan, he's a senior economist at Wells Fargo who wrote that report, and I quote, "Because no central repository exists for monitoring it, growth of this phantom debt could imply total household debt levels are actually higher than traditional measures." Now, since buy now, pay later loans are not currently reported to major credit reporting agencies, that also makes it a challenge for a lender to know how many loans a consumer has outstanding. In other words, let's say you're trying to get a loan to buy a car, a mortgage, rent, whatever it is, and they see, okay, well, on paper, easy numbers, you have $1,000 worth of debt every month, so you can afford this, when actually you got $4, because you keep buying stuff, but it's not being reported to them, and so your monthly debt load is $4,000 a month, and now on top of it, you're adding rent you can't afford, or a mortgage, or a car payment, whatever that is. Basically, it's a kind of shadow debt that hangs over people, and to quote Quinlan again, BNPL could lead to an increase in consumer debt, as consumers may be likely to take on additional debt if they know they can spread out the payments. You can bury yourself in low monthly payments. So, by virtue of that, making it way easier to simply tap into this and then increase your debt load is, I think, going to be a bad thing. Now, look at younger people, and it's one of the big issues that we've had with things like college loans, where you're like, hey, 18-year-old, that barely knows much, go ahead and sign this $200,000 loan that you don't have to pay back now. And when you get out of college, you're saddled with debt for literally decades. You can go Google that. There's a ton of information on just the pain points of that. But if you're talking about something like this, where I really want it in a consumer thing, I need the latest iPhone this year, next year, and all of that, and all you're doing is adding the debt load, you're turning in the iPhone 16 to get the 17, and you're still paying on the 16. These are the kinds of things that we're talking about. These things increase. It's like going upside down or underwater, having a huge debt load in a car, and then trading it in to get a new car, and then tacking on the debt of the old car onto the new car. Well, now you've got a bigger loan, and it continues to snowball, but now it's death by 1,000 cuts. So I think this is a huge problem that we're going to see, and SNL had a great skit on it about basically money tips. If you don't have the money, you shouldn't buy it. And while I understand there are longitudinal things like cars where you're going to go into debt, but it's a fixed cost. You know what you're paying per month. These add up instantly. And so I think this is a huge problem that we're going to see, and we're going to look at increasing consumer debt over time as people buy more, which looks good on paper, but then the debt basically continues to accrue. And if the credit reporting bureaus don't understand this, and believe me, I'm no fan of them, for the record, we're going to run into essentially, I think, at some point, a perfect storm of just all of these little buy now, pay later things that quite frankly, people get in over their heads with, and we may potentially see a crash in the overall credit rating, and that might be an issue. I'm not an economist, but this doesn't sound good at all, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you are. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.